What if I told you that ordinary people, college students, parents, even infants, can be pushed to act in shocking, sometimes cruel ways just by the situation they're in or the people around them? Sounds hard to believe, right? But history is full of psychological experiments that shattered our assumptions about human nature and revealed how fragile our sense of control really is. In today's video, we're diving into 5 of the most famous psychology experiments ever conducted, studies that shook the world, changed how we understand ourselves, and still influence everything from parenting and education to law enforcement and ethics. From prisoners turning violent in a fake jail to toddlers learning aggression just by watching, these stories show how powerful the invisible forces around us really are. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you see people and yourself. Number 1. The Stanford Prison Experiment by American psychologist Philip Zimbardo in 1971. It was a hot August morning in 1971 when Philip Zimbardo's prison came to life. Not in some grim fortress, but in the basement of Stanford University's psychology building. The hallways had been converted into tiny windowless cells with heavy doors, bars, and a claustrophobic air. 24 healthy college guys showed up, having been told they'd get $15 a day to take part in a study about prison life. They were randomly assigned roles, half guards, half prisoners. The guards were given khaki uniforms, mirrored sunglasses to hide their eyes, and wooden batons. The prisoners? Baggy smocks, stocking caps, and ID numbers instead of names. From the very start, something shifted. The guards began inventing strict rules, then punishing inmates for the smallest slip. Push-ups, solitary confinement, public humiliation, all dreamed up on the spot. By day 2, some prisoners were breaking down, sobbing, screaming. Others went eerily quiet, as if the fight had drained out of them. Zimbardo, acting as prison superintendent, was supposed to observe. Instead, he got caught up in the role, prioritizing order over his participants' well-being. What was supposed to be a 2-week study was shut down after just 6 days when a grad student visiting the prison was horrified at what she saw. The story sent shockwaves through the public. It became a chilling demonstration of how ordinary people, given power and the right situation, can slip into cruelty faster than they ever imagined. It also forced psychologists to rethink the ethics of their work forever. Number 2. Milgram's Obedience Experiment by American psychologist Stanley Milgram in 1961. Picture yourself in a small lab room in 1961. A polite man in a gray lab coat greets you with a calm voice. We're studying the effects of punishment on learning. You're the teacher. Another man, the learner, is strapped into a chair in the next room, with wires running from his wrist to a machine in front of you. Your job, read him word pairs. If he gets one wrong, you press a lever to deliver an electric shock, starting mild, then increasing in 15-volt increments. Labels read things like moderate shock, danger, severe shock, and at the end, XXX. At first it's easy. The learner gets some wrong answers. You press the lever and he grunts in discomfort. But as the voltage climbs, his protests grow desperate. "Let me out!" he yells, then comes pounding on the wall. Eventually silence. You hesitate. But the man in the lab coat, unruffled, says, "Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue." You glance at him. You feel uneasy, maybe even sick, but your hand moves to the next switch anyway. In Stanley Milgram's study, 65% of people went all the way to 450 volts, believing they were inflicting potentially lethal pain, just because an authority figure told them to. It was a gut punch to the idea that only bad people commit atrocities. Ordinary folks, under the right pressure, could obey orders that clash with their conscience. Number 3. The Bobo Doll Experiment by Canadian-American psychologist Albert Bandura in 1961. It's 1961, and in a sunny playroom at Stanford University, a group of preschoolers gathers to watch a short scene. On the other side of a one-way mirror, an adult strides into a room filled with toys. In the center stands a large, inflatable clown, a Bobo doll, weighted at the bottom so it pops back up when knocked over. The adult suddenly turns aggressive, hitting Bobo with a mallet, kicking it, shouting things like "pow" and "sock him in the nose." The kids watch wide-eyed. Later, they get their own turn in the playroom. At first, they pick up blocks and toy cars, but soon, almost like they're acting out a script, They march over to Bobo and let loose. Punches, kicks, the same words they heard earlier. Some even get creative, inventing new ways to attack the doll. Albert Bandura's takeaway? Children don't need to be directly rewarded or punished to learn a behavior. They can learn simply by watching. If the model is rewarded, imitation rises. If punished, it drops. This simple truth sparked decades of debate about how TV, movies, and games shape kids' behavior. Number 4. The infamous Little Albert. In 1920, by American psychologist John B. Watson and his student Rosalie Rayner, who, believe it or not, later became his wife. In 1920, a 9-month-old baby, yes, a 9-month-old baby nicknamed Little Albert, became the center of one of psychology's most unsettling experiments. At first, Albert was a curious, calm boy. He'd reach for a white rat placed in front of him, smiling as it sniffed his hand. Then the experimenters paired the rat with something far less pleasant, a loud, startling clang made by striking a steel bar behind his head. After a few pairings, Albert's reaction changed. Now, when he saw the rat, he'd cry and try to crawl away. The fear didn't stop there. Soon, Albert was also afraid of anything with fur, a rabbit, a dog, even a Santa Claus mask with a fluffy beard. The message was clear. Fears could be conditioned just like Pavlov's dogs had learned to salivate to a bell. Watson wanted to show that emotions were learned, not just inborn. But there was no plan to reverse Albert's fear, no consideration of the long-term impact. The study became infamous, not just for what it taught about conditioning, but for how it ignored the basic rights and safety of its subject. 5. Asch's Conformity Experiments. By Polish-American psychologist Solomon Asch in the 1950s. It's the early 1950s. You take a seat in a classroom with 7 other people. The experimenter explains the task. Compare a target line to 3 other lines and say which one matches in length. Easy, right? The first few trials go smoothly. Everyone agrees on the obvious correct answer. But then something strange happens. On the next round, every single person before you says a line that's clearly wrong. You look again. The correct answer is obvious. But do you really want to be the odd one out? When it's your turn, your mouth feels dry. Line 2, you say, matching the group's wrong choice. Solomon Asch found that about a third of the time people caved to group pressure, even when the answer was crystal clear. 3 out of 4 participants gave at least one incorrect group answer. The presence of just one ally who broke with the group slashed conformity rates. It was a simple, elegant proof that the pull of the crowd can make us doubt our own eyes, and that the fear of standing out is powerful enough to bend reality. The bigger picture. What these experiments show us about ourselves. When you step back from these 5 stories, a disturbing and fascinating pattern emerges. In a fake prison, ordinary college kids slipped into cruelty in less than a week. In a small lab, polite strangers pressed buttons they thought would electrocute someone, just because a man in a lab coat told them to. In a playroom, children learned aggression just by watching an adult hit a toy clown. A baby learned to fear the soft touch of fur because of a loud, sudden noise. And in a simple line-matching test, grown adults doubted their own eyes to fit in with the group. Different settings, different people, different decades. But the same truth kept revealing itself. We are far more influenced by our environment, the people around us, and the roles we play than we like to believe. These experiments didn't just change psychology textbooks, they changed how we think about human nature. They forced schools to rethink how kids learn behavior, made governments and militaries take a harder look at obedience and authority, and pushed scientists to create strict ethical rules so research would never again harm people so carelessly. They also serve as a mirror. It's easy to believe we would never be the guard who bullies, the teacher who shocks, the child who imitates violence, or the adult who follows the crowd. But these experiments remind us that under the right circumstances, any one of us could. And that knowledge is powerful, because once we're aware of these invisible forces, we can start to resist them. Well, there it is. 5 psychology experiments that changed everything. These go beyond just the science sphere and spill into the real world. They highlight different reasons for why we may think and act the way we do. Which experiment surprised you the most? Are there any you already knew about? Let me know what you guys want to see more of in the comments section, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way. Thanks for watching. See you guys soon.